The harsh reality of interviewing for tech sales roles when you're 18 to 22 and you don't have a degree is that interviewers just don't care. And I mean this in two ways. One, they don't care that you're 18 if you're able to actually perform, show them that you have what it takes. But two, unless you're able to absolutely blow them out of the park and show them that you have what it takes, they're not even going to pay attention to the interview. And I'm saying this as someone who just this time last year was taking over 10 interviews in a single week, sometimes 5 in a single day, and over 90% of the time, the interviewers didn't even know that I was still in high school. And that was the number one line in my resume. Majority of the time, they only realized 10 minutes into a 15-minute interview, and I learned to know that look when they look off to the monitor to the side and they realize that they were talking to a high schooler. But I mean, just put yourself in their shoes, whether it be a recruiter or a sales manager. If you're a sales manager, this is the least favorite part of their job. They want to coach people to sell, they want to sell themselves, they don't even really want to coach people. If you're a recruiter, you're going through that conversation day after day after day, asking the same questions, getting the same response, and you're just subconsciously looking for reasons to disqualify people because you're not trying to do another interview. And then by the time you realize they don't even have a degree, maybe they're less than 20 years old, literally a teenager, you just have no chance. You have to find a way to break out of that cycle, get them out of that zombie state where they're just having the conversation on autopilot and create a deeper connection. So this video is not about how to pass the interview, what you need to prepare, what questions you need to ask, things like that, because there's a million of those online. This is specifically how to get them out of that state, build a deeper connection with them so you can actually stand out. Because what most people do is they focus on the tell me about yourself, why tech sales, why I want to work at that company. They focus on star responses in terms of storytelling, and all of those are good. You're still gonna need to do those. You're still gonna need to film yourself and go over your responses and make sure you have all of those done. But the reality is that none of that matters if they're just checking boxes of the questions that they need to ask and they're not even listening to what you're saying. So the number one thing that you need to do is learn how to get them to actually be invested, to want to hear your responses and not just check off those boxes. Because at the end of the day, they're hiring you for entry-level sales role. They're hiring you to talk to people in a specific way that gets their company paid. They're not expecting you to have some sort of experience for the most part. They're looking for potential, coachability, and how you're actually having a conversation. Because they know that if you leave a bad impression on them, you're probably going to do the same thing when you talk to customers. And if you are able to leave a good impression on them, build a connection with them, you're going to be able to do the exact same thing when you're talking to their customers, and that's going to be the person that they hire. But I mean, think about it. It's like when you're sitting in class and the teacher is saying a bunch of stuff, you might be looking at them, listening, but you're not actually processing what they're saying. And when that happens, do you really think they're going to hire you? When they get off the interview, they think about the things that you did good, nothing is actually going to stick. They're just looking for reasons to disqualify you. And that's why before you get to all of those questions, you need to break out of the robotic cycle, and you need to do that at the very beginning. At the end of the day, all that it really takes is just creating a mini conversation at the very beginning, making them feel interesting, important, showing that you're investing into them, and then humans are just agreeable creatures at the end of the day. When you're invested into them, when you show that you're interested in them, you show that you put in the time and the work, it just doesn't feel natural to just sit there, like look at the screen that you have, just ask the questions. That just feels rude and disrespectful. So they're naturally going to be more invested into you, more interested. They're going to lean in and actually listen to your responses. But the thing is, you have to do this at the very, very beginning, because at the end of the day, if you just hop on and say, hey, how are you? They say, hey, I'm doing good. And then they just go straight into the agenda. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions here. I'm going to leave some time for you to ask me any questions at the end. And then they just jump straight into questions. You have no time to get them out of that zombie automatic state where they're just asking question after question and peppering you. There is no time in between. So the way that you're actually able to break out of that cycle is when you first come on the conversation, you say, hey, Bob, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. How are you doing today? They say whatever it is that you're going to send you. And then with a smile, you say, I'm really excited for the conversation today. Thanks for taking the time. And I saw you actually used to be an SDR at the company yourself before moving into recruiting. Is that something that's pretty common? And now obviously you don't want to say in a condescending way like they weren't able to make it in sales, but you're able to show that you did your research. Whatever they say, you go, oh wow, that's really interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of similarities from sales, from doing outreach, talking to people that you're able to then put into recruiting. And what happens is, as long as you say with the good tonality, right, you understand their body language and you go and read the room. So if they're giving you long answers, you obviously speak more. If they're trying to brush you off and keep talking, you're not gonna keep doing that for as much time. But as long as you do that, you just show that you're interested. You're starting to build a little bit of rapport before going into the question after question after question. And now when you continue and show that you care about them, that you're interested, when you're invested in them because they're agreeable, when you say your answers, they're gonna do the same thing. And the best analogy that I have for this by far is something I heard last week from my brother. He actually heard it from Andrew Tate before. But think about it. What animal, what creature do humans like most in the entire world? Dogs, right? Humans are loyal to their dogs. Dogs are loyal to the humans. And think about it. What do dogs act like? Whenever you open a door, go into a room, whenever they see you for the first time, they run up to you, they jump on you, they bark, they lick you. No matter what they're doing, if they were sleeping, if somebody else was petting them, they just run straight to you and they come in there excited and they stay next to your leg. They're invested in you, they're interested, they love you, and that's why you want to be with them. And at the end of the day, when somebody gets off an interview, they ask themselves, would I actually want to work with that person? And guess what? If they feel that interest and that invest in you, they're going to want to work with that person versus the one that just says, hey, how are you? And when you do all of that, what are they going to think about you? They're going to think that you care, that you're interested in the role, that you thought critically before to put in the effort to at least check their LinkedIn at the very least and then make it conversational, be friendly. Right? But you absolutely have to do this at the very beginning before they get to their agenda. You have your shot after all the questions, but unless you're able to build some sort of rapport, a bit more of a conversation, a bit more of a connection at the very, very beginning, the entire time, if they're just going through the checklist, they're not actually paying attention to you. So you gotta do this at the very beginning. And that means you need to come prepared for that. So that's very simple to do. You just need to have a couple of ideas in mind that you can start the conversation with. So look at their LinkedIn, look at their experience section, look at their volunteering, where they went to school, where they grew up, look at their last posts. Something you can do to actually make that a lot better is just when you look at somebody's LinkedIn, on the top right, there's going to be 3 dots. If you click on that, you can download it as a PDF. And what's going to happen, it's going to download their entire profile. And then you can just throw that into ChatGPT, into Claude, and ask them about things that you can actually start a conversation with. Now, you don't want to be too set on those things because that might not be conversational. It might come off as fake. You don't want to just act like you did all the same things that they did. But at the end of the day, you want to have those as backup. And if you see something else that just happens to be in their background or they mention something about their school's kids, about a sports team, you're able to then use that as an example and continue the mini conversation that you have, the rapport building stage from there. The best interview that I've ever had by far, where the recruiter fought for me the most internally in the company, is exactly when that happened. And that was actually when I realized this concept. Because he actually reached out for me. He was outsourced for the company, so he was looking to find people to fill in that role. And because my LinkedIn was optimized, he ended up reaching out to me. We had a fun conversation, and the entire time we barely even spoke about the role itself. We spoke about tennis. We spoke about the fact that he was Jewish and I was from Israel, and he went there and with his kids and he wants to go again with his wife, and how he plays tennis doubles with his 60-year-old friends. And the entire time we spoke about that, and maybe 5 minutes at the end of a 30-minute long phone conversation, we spoke about the role itself. It turns out that wasn't actually the official interview when we did that. That was just a phone call. And then we scheduled the official interview that I had with him over Zoom. And we spoke about a lot of those same things, about how we appreciated all of that. We just had a really good time chatting like boys, basically, the entire time. And I'm in my head, I'm like, what a waste of time. I'm like, I can go to the gym, I can go reach out to more people. But at the end of the day, what happened is when he actually moved me to the interview with the VP of sales, that was the next stage, the first thing that we got on the interview, what he told me, was they heard amazing thing from Jamie, the recruiter. And he said he always hears really good things about most candidates, but usually Jamie will just text or email him. And this time Jamie specifically called him and let him know that I was a really good candidate ahead of time. And that made the entire interview so much easier because then the interviewer was excited to have the conversation. He already wasn't in that checklist mindset before, and he was already invested into me whenever I said my answers. He wanted to learn more and see what was so special about me that Jamie liked so much. And then when he realized that I was 18, instead of panicking, he was already really excited about having me, and he was like, I'm not sure how this is gonna work, but we'll figure this out. And then Jamie called me an hour after the interview, and he told me that he spoke with Colin over the phone. They spoke over the phone, and Jamie really advocated for me. So having that person on your side that you build rapport with, that you have a really deep connection with, is a lot of time going to be the difference between getting the role or not. Because they're gonna have conversations internally, they have all the recordings too, and you need someone to fight for you internally that really wants you to get the role, or at least really wants you to move forward to actually have a chance. Because the reality is, it's not good enough to just not suck and not have a reason to be disqualified. You need that person fighting for you. So the way that you actually strategically ask questions to get them to talk is not just having those questions pop up, and you want to do observation into an open-ended question and then follow up. So all that means is say those exact same thing. Like I said, I saw that you went from an SDR to a recruiter. Wow, that's really cool. That's interesting. Is that something that's common in the company? And then the biggest, most important one is when he responds, be really interested and invested into the answer. Wow, that's really cool. I'm sure there's a lot of things that you took from it. Another example could be, and that's something that I saw a lot of the time, about the post that they made. I saw you posted something about the similarities from sports to sales. That's actually one of the reasons that I got into sales in the first place, because of how similar it is to sports. Out of curiosity, what sport did you come from? Oh wow, do you still play that? And you can continue and follow up those questions as you do that. And then they know you did your research, they know you're invested into them, and they feel respected, they feel like they're actually important after they just got off of 5 different interviews when they just go through the checklist one after one after one. And it is really, really important that you read the room as you're doing this. If you do this and you notice they're back, they're starting to be a little bit more invested, they have answers, they might ask you a couple questions back, that's awesome. That's ideally what you want to happen, but it's not gonna happen every time. Some of them are genuinely miserable, some of them are not gonna want to have those conversations with you, and then you just let it go, right? You ask them a question too, and then you notice they don't really want to talk about it, you just let them set their agenda. You just say you're really excited about the conversation, and you let it be. But at least that way they know you tried. Because at the end of the day, the whole thing can be really, really good, like doing all of this, but it doesn't matter if you're just peppering them with question after question after question, and in their mind, they're just thinking, I want to get over with this interview, I want to start asking the questions. Because if you do that in a sales call and you're not able to pick up those body language from your prospects, you're not gonna be successful in sales either. Because a form of empathy is actually listening and paying attention. So by not paying attention and not listening, you're being unempathetic. And also you need to keep in mind that people have different interviewing styles. Some of them might genuinely just be tired, but some of them have the style of just hopping on the call, being like, hey man, how's it going? I'm gonna just ask you a couple questions here. I'll leave some time for you to ask me questions at the end. And then you just jump straight into the interview as soon as you hopped on the conversation. And then in that case, when you're going to be able to build rapport and have that conversation with them, go out of that Q&A mindset, is when they ask you, what questions do you have for me? And you really got to capitalize on that there. Other people, for instance, their entire interview strategy is just having a conversation with you. That might be a little bit more in later stages after you've already been screened by a recruiter. But they're just gonna have a conversation with you, and they're gonna just try to feel what type of person are you. So don't try to force it too much, because at the end of the day, the whole point of building rapport, building that connection, is for it to feel natural and to be a genuine, real connection that you're both excited about the conversation. And if you just try and force it, it's going to do the complete opposite. Especially if it's a sales manager, because at the end of the day, what they're asking themselves is, would I wanna work with this person every single day of my life? And not only would I want to work with them, but do I actually see myself developing that person as an elite salesperson that could be a top performer on my team? So the way that you do this consistently is, one, you come prepared with those things from LinkedIn. You can search the company, go to the About section and go about our team, see if there's any fun facts that they have about themselves. But then from the very beginning, you gotta make sure that you have a good first impression. That's essentially what this whole thing is. But even before you open your mouth, you already made a first impression. If it's in person, in a quarter of a second, that's when people start to judge you. A quarter of a second. If it's online over Zoom, which is where most of these are going to be, you have 4 seconds until they start judging you. So you have a little bit more time, but you want to have good lighting. By far, you want to wear at the very least a dress shirt, ideally have a jacket on top of it. Come smiling, come with your chest out, sit up straight, and make sure that you come off as confident at the very, very beginning, because this is for a sales role. And the reason all of this is especially important when you don't have a degree is because every time, again, they're not gonna know until halfway through the interview, but when they have that moment, when they look to the side, they look at their monitor, and they realize that that person doesn't have a degree. Maybe he just graduated high school a year ago, a couple months ago. When I was doing it, I was literally in high school, sometime from my building interviewing, and they realize one of two things is going to happen. One, which you obviously don't want to happen, is they're just gonna feel like they wasted their time. They're gonna get mad at whoever recruiter even set up the interview. Or the other one is they're gonna really love it and they're gonna look for ways to actually make sure that you can actually get the role. You're gonna stand out automatically. Because at the end of the day, this is polarizing, right? And as long as you really embrace it and you're confident about it, it's gonna go one or two. And you can actually impact which way it goes. It's not just luck. And the way that you do that is one, with all the questions that you had before, but through the rapport that you were able to build up until that point. When I had that interview with the VP of the company that Jamie was recruiting for, one, he came in knowing more about me, but he really, really liked me. And he already said a couple of times throughout the interview that he was planning on moving me to the next round. So then when he found out that I was 18, he was extremely shocked. It definitely didn't help that it was during my lunch and then the bell went off in the back. Like, kid you not, 2 minutes later. It was the worst timing ever. But because the entire interview up to that point went so well, we had rapport, we had the connection, I had good answers, which is important too. Then when that came, he just really liked it. And that's what moved me all the way up, and I ended up getting the offer there for 110K. And even when I told them I was gonna go somewhere else before that, they still fought to continue and talk to me, ended up actually introducing me to the president of the company, other people. When I already told them that I had an offer, he even invited me in person because we really had that rapport. Now, another time I had an interview, second round interview also, for a different company. I did my research. I shot a LinkedIn note actually to the sales manager the day before, and I spelled her name wrong. And she replied to me. And now, if you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People, you know the number one favorite word of every person is their name. So when you get it right, when you remember their name, it shows that you're interested, shows that you invested. But if you can get it right and you get their name wrong, that's a huge red flag, especially in sales. And she corrected me. She sent another LinkedIn message. She was like, something really short, like, it's this actually. Like, not saying excited for the interview too, anything like that, just correcting me. So I already started it off a bad note. Of course, I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry. Also, if you read How to Win Friends and Influence People, which everybody should read, by the way, especially if you're looking to get into sales, but amazing book. Everybody should read that anyway. What you should do is over apologize for a little bit to where it just seems weird if they still hang on to it. So be really, really sorry. And then what they actually did when I hopped on the call, that was my mini conversation. I was like, oh, I'm really, really sorry. I definitely started this off a bad note, but I apologize. And then we had a little bit of rapport. She goes like, oh yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, I get that all the time too, because my name is Eitan. Most people don't know how to spell it, let alone pronounce it. So I'm sorry that I did the same mistake. And then she goes, oh, where are you from? And you're able to start that mini conversation. And then when it got to the point where she realized that I was 18, keep in mind, this is the second round interview. So I already was interviewed by the recruiter and she still didn't pass on that information. And I was literally in high school when that was happening. She was shocked. She literally told me, the interview has been this and so far, but I just think you need a degree to be able to work for us. That role was for $90,000 a year in terms of OTE. And I had a little bit of rapport with her, but because I was then able to really double down and say it actually just says preferred on the job application, and I'm confident that I can do, I have what it takes given my experiences as a student athlete, all the things that I've learned in terms of dedication, how I've been coaching people, my customer facing experience just from playing tennis. And then as I was saying it, she just started gassing me up. She was just smiling. She was like this, nodding her head along. She was so invested in the answer. She was loving it. And she was like, okay, let's just keep doing the interview. I'll just need to make sure. And then 3 days later, I got the email that I was able to pass that interview. And it's all because one, I doubled down, but because I had that rapport, she was even listening to me. Because the other times I had interviewers where I didn't even get to do any of that. We just jumped straight into questions, answers, Q&A from the very beginning. And when we got to that point, they almost hung up at that point, right? From there, they just really went fast about all the questions, but they already made up in their mind that they're going to not hire me. So creating that rapport at the beginning is really, really important. And then the one other place that you can do this, where you can build rapport, is at the very end. In every single interview, they're gonna say, okay, those are all the questions I had for you. What questions do you have for me? You always wanna have at least 3 questions at the very least, but have 5 prepared just in case, and do the exact same thing. Have follow-ups, make it more into a conversation, less of a Q&A. That way you're able to continue to build rapport, stand out there. You can ask, how can I exceed your expectations for the role? Make sure that your understanding of it is good, the performance of the team. And then at the very, very end, you wanna ask, based on how this conversation went, based on the things you're looking for, do you have any concerns about moving me forward? And then what that does is it shows that you're able to essentially ask for the sale the way you would on a sales role. But also, if they have any genuine concerns, sometimes they will genuinely tell you. And then you're able to overcome it like an objection. Sometimes they're not gonna tell you, they'll just say, I need to talk to other people, blah, 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 blah. And most of the time when they say that, they just are not going to pass you. Because again, managers are hiring for people they want to work with and people they believe can become a top performer on their team. They make money based on the commission that you make also. So they want top performers on that team. So yes, you're gonna need to prepare for the tell me about yourself, why sales, why do you want to work in this company? You want to have a couple of stories to tell about your life, things you've been through, how you were able to grow and learn from it. But none of that matters unless you're actually listening and are invested in what you're saying. So it is absolutely crucial that you know how to do this. You come doing your research, yes, about the company, but about the person that you're going to talk about, so you can build that connection and have someone that's actually fighting for you beyond just the conversation that you're having when they're just talking internally, is doing the work when you don't even know it. And the reality is you're going to do your research and everything, but you're probably still going to suck at the beginning. I know I did. I was literally shaking like this under the table in my first couple of interviews. You absolutely need to do a ton of practice, and you'll do that in front of a camera, but you need to just practice by applying to companies that you don't care about as much as first and learning how to get a ton of interviews. Without learning how to get a ton of interviews so you can practice, you're just not gonna get to a point where you can actually do all of this sufficiently. So if you want to learn how I was able to get over 10 interviews a week when I was still in high school, eventually get multiple 6-figure offers when I was 18 in high school, watch the video that's on the screen right now.